Well, good evening. My name is Bryce Carter, and I am the Colorado Program Director with Solar United Neighbors. We are a vendor-neutral nonprofit organization that helps people go solar, come together, and advocate for energy rights. And we're so excited to be launching our second solar co-op in the region following our Yampa Valley Solar Co-op in 2019. And this time we're going to be serving the communities of Routt, Moffett, and Rio Blanco counties. And tonight is really a celebration of the continuation of our work with the official launch of the 2022 Northwest Solar Co-op. Since our program launched in 2019, we've helped over 320 families and small businesses go solar, and we're really excited to continue to expand our impact throughout the region. We're also very thankful for the many partnerships in the community, especially the sponsorship that we have with the City of Steamboat Springs, Routt County, and the Craig-Scheckman Family Foundation, as well as other partners, including the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council, the Chambers of Commerce of Corrigan and Meeker, the Alpine Bank, and many other organizations across the state. So with that out of the way, we'll talk more about what solar is. We'll talk about the financing and economics of it, and a little bit more about the solar co-op later. But for now, we'd love to have you introduce or meet some of the different partners that we have in the community. And so with that, I would love to pass the torch over to Routt County Commissioner Tim Corrigan to continue this welcome. Tim.
Thank you all for coming here today. I know that Routt County is really excited to be a partner in this project. I brought along with me a little prop, and it's our Routt County Climate Action Plan that we developed in the partnership with the municipalities around the community. And this is one that we're committed to not letting the dust settle upon like so many studies we've done in the past. One of the interesting things is in this climate action plan, the first sector that is addressed is energy. And in that section, the study showed that 54% of greenhouse gas emissions are created out of buildings by burning propane, natural gas, electricity, and wood. And that we've committed to an 82% reduction in that sector by 2050. And the first strategy in that first sector is increasing the adoption of renewable energy. And this, I think, this project that we're doing here with the community is a really great example of what we can do and what we can do as a community, not what government can do. Because a lot of what the focus of the Routt County Climate Action Plan is what the various governmental entities can do within their own operations. But that's not going to be nearly enough to address the challenge at hand. So I think the adoption of solar energy by individuals in the community is probably going to do far more than what we can do as a governmental entity on our own. I know that I'm personally committed. I live out south of Yampa, and I'm very excited. We're planning on doing a significant ground-mounted array out of this process. And the number crunching that I've done is, while it's probably the right thing to do, I expect it's going to save me money. And so on that basis, this is a real win-win for the community and for the members of our community. So hopefully enough of us will participate and we can get this thing going. Thank you.
So I'm Winnie Delliquadri with the City of Steamboat Springs. One of the things that I've done at the city is work on 2 different solar projects. One put solar arrays on 13 different government buildings. And then another one is partnering with the city of Craig on a solar garden. And from those 2 experiences, the couple takeaways I had is that it can be a complex process, and having technical assistance is super helpful. And so one of the benefits of the co-op is that the co-op provides that technical assistance. So not only can you do it, but you know, do this, but you have people that are knowledgeable about this that are helping you along the way, and that is super helpful. The other thing that we learned is there are huge benefits to bulk ordering and cost efficiencies to doing something to scale. So our expectation is that it will be easier and less expensive for you to do this through a co-op than it would be to do it on your own. You can do it on your own. There's nowhere big, right? Like you can absolutely do it, go for it. Both the county and the city have gone through solar readiness processes. So we've tried to make our process as easy as possible. And that said, it's still super useful to have technical assistance. So that is where the solar co-op comes in. And then the other thing I should note, because this came up in a couple of conversations that I've had, a lot of people say, well, why not just build a solar garden? And Megan might be able to speak to this more, but YBEA's larger contract with Excel Energy restricts the amount of solar garden generation that they can have. And we are currently in the middle of a project that will fully utilize that capacity. And so for our area to move forward on solar, it has to be behind the meter, which means it can't be a solar garden that can serve anybody. It has to be associated with an energy meter. And that's a really important thing to take forward. So as you think about solar, right now, our option is behind the meter, which means on individual houses or yards. So that is a huge point. And that's one of the reasons why the city is supporting the co-op with the county and other partners. Paul?
I think you have a question. Go.
Yeah, maybe too early, but you're saying individual houses. What about neighborhoods? Could like 3 or 4, okay.
No.
Rats.
Yep. And so I'm going to turn it over to Paul.
Hi, I'm not Michelle Stewart from the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council. She sends her regrets, but there's this bug called COVID making its way through the community, and she's kind of recovered out of that. So I'm your plucky stand-up alternative. I've been involved with solar way back when only people who lived off-grid did solar. And when I'm not with the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council, I'm going into my 9th year as a board director for Solar Energy International in Paonia. So I've been helping folks do solar for a long, long time, both contractors, utilities, and individuals. And at the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council, we're really about sustainability, which is about climate action, which is about resilience for our community, all the way down to the individual level. And our vision is to bring a healthier, resilient Yampa Valley united through climate action. So this fits that goal. And it touches 2 of our 5 principles. One is energy. So solar allows you to be more resilient. It gives you more control. As Winnie alluded to, if you've got solar at your home, then that's just one more personal option you can take to control your energy future. And then there's a piece of this that you'll hear about later this evening. This co-op can also bring in EV charging as part of the bulk purchase. So that'll also affect our goals to do electrification of transportation. So I spent many years helping contractors in the solar industry. And one of the reasons people ask all the time, well, how does this purchasing co-op help me get a better price? Well, one of the biggest line items for solar contractors is customer acquisition, right? So for a solar contractor to get this many people in a room that are interested in solar, we would call those qualified leads, I would spend about 1/3 of my budget as a contractor on marketing and customer acquisition. So what this solar purchasing co-op does is it takes, by bringing us together through Sun's process, we can turn over a group of dedicated people ready to make a purchase decision, and the contractor doesn't have to filter through 100 leads to make those handful of sales. So that's really the power of this, is the group purchasing. So on behalf of the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council, thank you all for coming, and we're excited to be helping with this effort.
Jeff is next.
All right, I'm sharing my screen up here. I brought a presentation today just because the stuff I talk about is a little bit complicated and it's easier to read than talk about. All right, so I'm Jeff from Yampa Valley Electric. I am the Energy Resources Program Coordinator. I work under Meeker Chamber. So if any questions pop up along the way, just let me know. So one disclaimer is that this is only, the information that I'm presenting today is only for members that are within the Yampa Valley Electric Service Territory. So under the Yampa Valley Electric Solar Program, we allow for members to build up to 120% of their previous year's kWh usage, up to either a nameplate of 25 kW or 150 kW. And that's broken down to if you're small general service or medium and large general service.
Jeff, how many homes do you think would reach 25 kW?
Not that many. It would have to be a large, very large home.
So a majority of homes in our service territory would be at that 120% of your average annual
Yeah, most of us will probably
consumption.
settle around the 10 kW system, maybe a little less, I guess. And then members that currently participate in YVA community solar gardens, they will need to reduce their kWh by the expected generation that is provided by that community solar garden. So the next thing is, how do you tell if your kWh usage? So there's two different ways. There's Smart Hub, which is Yampa Valley's website that you can go in and actually see your bills by month, and you can download an actual history of everything. Or you can go to the top of your bill that we mail out every month, and you can sum the values across the top and then multiply that by 120%, and that will give you the kWh that you're allowed to generate during that year. Next is your the middle part of your bill will change a little bit. So typically you only have the first line that says small general service. The new two line items will be excess generation. The excess generation is what is not consumed by your house, but is put out onto the Yampa Valley grid. So if you have, let's say, a TV, computer, anything in the kitchen running and you're generating solar, your house is going to use that first, and then it's going to put the rest onto the Yampa Valley grid. And then what we do is we subtract out the excess generation that we receive from the first line item, which is the electricity that you currently use from YVA, and then it'll net out. So that 115 is then multiplied by the by whatever electricity rate that you're under, so small, medium, or large general service. So in this scenario, we're looking at taking 115 kWh and multiplying it by 0.0945 for this current bill.
So we give you a new meter that meters both your energy consumption from the grid and then your energy production back to the grid. So that it is all calculated, right? And on an annual basis, we true that up with you. So we provide you a bank essentially. So that you can bank any extra kilowatt hours that you're selling back to Yampa Valley Electric and use them against your annual usage.
Is there any option for an individual house to have a battery?
Yes. Yes, you could have a battery storage. So it would charge that battery first before it distributed onto the grid. And then you can use that for reliability purposes. So everybody does know that if there is an outage on at your house, the solar will not stay on and you won't still continually have electricity via the solar panels.
And I think Bryce is going to talk about batteries in his presentation, also as part of the co-op. Yes.
Oh, as for the bank that the stores, that expires at the end of the fiscal year.
That'll go through March.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
that's what I was gonna hope for, was that it was ending at the end of March, because we could save it all, our kilowatts during the summer and then use them through the winter.
Yeah, at the request of our membership, we changed that.
Okay,
So
that's
they can
perfect.
make
That
better
was the
use of
question.
their
So that's
solar
great, 'cause
production.
I would like to add battery capacity, but there's those spikes, when it's
Right.
really low, but yeah, great, awesome.
And so that's paid back at the retail rate?
So it'll be paid, the banked usage is paid back at currently 0.033 cents.
Okay.
But
So-
yes, but the current net is paid back at the retail rate.
Okay.
So
So the-
anything over that, you're 100% annually. So that 20% buffer, we pay out at our avoided wholesale power cost.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Thank you.
So our whole
But
goal-
you're essentially using it at our retail costs, right?
Right.
Throughout the whole year.
So it's not like you'd be paid back, if you powered your entire home, you wouldn't be paid back 20% of what your bill was, because that's retail costs.
I'm sorry, I don't think I understand.
I'm an English major, I might be saying it wrong.
I'm an English major.
I think a way to think of it is if you pay 9 cents a kilowatt hour, let's say, you get paid back like 3 cents on that.
Got it, okay, I'm with you.
So that really emphasizes that if we put kilowatts into that bank, then we should try to use them up before the end of March.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes. I mean, the intent of our net metering program is to help our membership control their costs.
Right.
It's not to have the co-op purchasing back
Right.
power,
Right.
right?
Is there
Yeah.
an allowance for a future electric vehicle in this 120% value?
Yeah, so when we're sizing the system for the 120%, we do allow you to put notes in there for if you're gonna do an EV, say you're gonna kind of hot tub. Any large electrical usage, just let us know, and we'll size that in there.
Including like heat pumps and stuff?
Yep. So this next bill is an example of when we would receive bank usage. So if you see during this month, this member would have used 590 kWh and they generated 600. So 10 kW will go into the bank usage. And then this is an example of when we use the bank usage. So say like that February day. So this member would have generated 475 and we'd use 115 kWh to offset it. And I do want to make sure that everybody's aware the system access costs will always be added in to our bill. So never have a $0 bill. So just when you guys are digging around, you do have a solar webpage that really dives into everything solar. That should be coming out in the next week or so. So feel free to click around on our website in the future. And then YVA does offer a $250 for a level 2 EV charger. You just have to show that you bought it and take a picture with it installed. And then you'll fill out the application on our website, and then that $250 will be reduced off your bill.
Yeah, we put that in here because Bryce is going to talk about EV chargers as part of the co-op. So we just wanted to make sure you're aware there is a rebate. If we choose to do that.
And when
with
is
co-op.
this?
The rebate, it's currently, so if you have a charger installed in your house, you can currently apply for it. Just go to the Yampa Valley Electric website and then top right, you can click rebates and you can do that. And that's all I have. So I think it's Bryce's turn.
I did want, since YVA has the floor, I did want to say to Winnie's point, so many of you know, as part of our wholesale purchase contract with Excel Energy, we have a carve out of how much local power we can purchase outside of that all requirements contract. So we have met that 3% with our purchase of Stagecoach hydroelectric power. We have a big solar project in Craig that we're working on. There will be a community solar piece of that, probably not till 2023. And then I do always like to share that power is 42% renewable. So whatever you do end up using from us during your times you're not using your solar, that does have a proportionality of renewable power.
And
Thanks.
Megan, does that impact participation numbers in this program at all? So like, would you hit a threshold where you went over the, contractual agreement or anything?
With Excel?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
They don't have a purview over net metering behind the meter.
Oh,
That's
right.
really your choice,
Okay.
right?
Question, if you're building a new house, how much solar can you put on, or how do you ascertain that?
So it's gonna be, we're working on a process right now. It depends on the size of the house. We either require a load calc if that's being done at your house, or we'll probably base it off the square footage in the heating type.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, well, Jeff, Megan, and everybody, thank you so much. I think this is a really good introduction to the presentation tonight. We'll recap some of these things as well through the presentation. So if anybody still has lingering questions, we can make sure we hit on those. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and dive in on the solar component. And do bear with me, I am unfortunately recovering from COVID. So if I start coughing, I'll mute so you don't have to hear me. But again, my name is Bryce Carter. I really appreciate everyone coming out. I apologize for not being able to be there in person, but we will be doing more events throughout the region over the next couple months. And so I'll talk a little bit tonight about the co-op. But again, I want to acknowledge all of our partners, including the City of Steamboat Springs, Routt County, the Craig Chamber, the Meeker Chamber, the Yampa Valley Sustainability Council, and the Craig-Scheckman Family Foundation, as well as Alpine Bank and a few others. So, you know, we are a nonprofit. Our work is very much tied within the community, and our success is really peer-to-peer outreach and engagement. And we're very appreciative of collaboration, whether it is through Yampa Valley Electric Association or White River and others, just to be on the same page and making sure that folks are informed of what options they have, whether we're looking at solar or other rebates available. So we did invite and wanted to make sure that Yampa Valley and others had an opportunity to present today. So as I mentioned, we are a nonprofit organization. We are vendor neutral in that our members select the installers that serve our co-ops, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. And our main theory of change is threefold. We help people go solar, and that's both supporting new and existing systems. We have kind of a community outreach component where we join together, and that's cultivating resources. We do happy hours and tours and other ways of just bringing the community together. And then we also fight for energy rights. So whether that's helping support policies like net metering, working with homeowners if they're working with their homeowners associations, if there's any hiccups there, and other ways that we look at keeping policy moving forward. And our organization started as a grassroots movement in Washington, D.C. back in 2007. Our executive director, Anya Skillman, in this photo, and her son, Walter, and his friend Diego, they were inspired to take climate action and ultimately decided that solar was one of the best ways for them to move forward with that. And when they were brainstorming on what they could do, they realized solar was a really great way to move forward, but they didn't really know where to begin. And so Anya encouraged them to help pull in a bunch of neighbors, and they could form a learning group around it. And pretty soon 50 neighbors said, yeah, let's look at this, let's go solar together. And that was our very first solar co-op, where ultimately of those 50 neighbors, I think about 48 of them were able to install solar. So from those humble beginnings, we've now become a national organization with members in all 50 states. We've helped facilitate over 325 solar co-ops, and we actually now, this is out of date, we now have over 50 staff supporting over 500,000 people. So nationwide, we've helped over 6,500 families and small businesses go solar, installing over 55 megawatts of capacity and offsetting over 766,000 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. And particularly in Colorado, since 2019, when we launched our Colorado program, we've helped over 322 families go solar, installing 2.2 megawatts worth of installed capacity, investing nearly $6.5 million in the local economy, and projecting over almost $10 million of savings that those families and businesses will realize over the life of those systems. And so all this work is helping create local jobs and continues to build impact in terms of addressing climate change. And certainly we know that there's a lot of change happening both in Colorado and across the world in terms of transitioning to renewable energy economy. We know there's a variety of challenges and communities facing systems of oppression and facing really challenging questions, like certainly in the Yampa Valley, looking at the transitions ahead, moving away from coal and embracing what's next. And so we know that solar isn't the answer, but we want to be a partner in the community wherever we can to facilitate dialogue and build engagement and support the community. And so that's one of our key values as an organization is just to make sure that, we can help play a role where there is a fair and equitable transition for what's ahead. And so I really want to emphasize that as a key component of what we do. So for my presentation tonight, I'm going to cover solar technology, solar economics, and how solar co-ops work. I'm going to pause at the end of each section and take questions from you all so we can cover all these different pieces and then go from there. So I'm going to jump into solar technology here. And we're going to start pretty basic here. Solar photovoltaic, short is PV, converts solar energy into electricity. Photo being light, voltaic being power when you break down that word. And right now, panels on the market can convert about 20% of the photons that hit it into electricity. So when you're looking at the amount of sun energy, we can capture about a fifth of that and convert that into electricity. Solar panels can do that through essentially wafers of silicon. As you refine it, through physics, it can, like I said, capture those photons and create a electron current and a one direction current, and you can actually line them up in parallel. For those of you that know from your physics high school classes doing those battery experiments, you can actually line them all up and build more voltage and more power out of it. So the solar panel is designed that way, and then you can actually have multiple solar panels in a single line or an array to create a solar system. So you can actually size these up. And so when we talk about sizing, two terms to know are kilowatts and kilowatt hours. A kilowatt being 1,000 watts. And the way I like to say it is that a kilowatt is kind of the capacity or potential of your solar system. So if you think about a car, let's just say it's the horsepower of that vehicle going up a hill, you're flooring the engine, you're using the maximum potential. Same thing with a solar panel, noon on a sunny day. And then kilowatt hours is what that energy is produced over time. So it's like tracking, say, your miles per gallon, for instance, in a car, same thing with kilowatt hours. So in this example, each one of these solar panels is a 300 watt panel. Put together is 3,000 watts or 3,000 watts or 3 kilowatts. And at full capacity, say for 2 hours on a sunny day, you would produce 6 kilowatt hours of electricity, give or take. So most home sizes, they can vary, but we see between 5 to 7 kilowatts. It really depends on your budget and what you're trying to capture. And as you heard earlier, there's not much incentive to oversize your system beyond 100% unless you anticipate that you are going to electrify in the future, whether for electric vehicle, heat pump, or other needs. So once you do have your solar system, it has to go someplace. So you can have a racking system, and here it shows within the asphalt shingle roof, they just bolt it into the awning securely, and they provide waterproof flashing to make sure that there's no issues with water. For metal roofs, which I know there are a lot of in the area, sometimes you don't even need to have penetrations. You can actually just clamp them on securely. And certainly solar acts similar to a metal roof, so especially with snow loads, which is a question we always get, tends to melt off and shed similar to a metal roof. And then there's even the option of ground mounted solar if your roof isn't qualified for it. So that's certainly an option, but there will be additional costs to build out the infrastructure, including trenching the lines and building the foundations for it. So as you have that electricity production, you have that direct current coming out of the panel. You need to convert that electricity into alternating current, which is electricity we use in our homes. An inverter is a technology that does that. A string inverter can be used as a system as a whole. So you can have multiple arrays or strings of panels that all connect, and the string inverter converts that at one location, versus microinverters essentially do that at each individual panel. There are pros and cons to both. Microinverters tend to be a little bit more expensive, but they're becoming a little bit more favorable because they're a little bit more flexible. And then ultimately, your electric panel is where all this gets connected to. It's often a simple connection, and most homes don't need to have upgrades before going solar. It depends on electrical codes. In some markets, like in Denver, we've seen that there are more needs in terms of updating everything from periscope power lines to other things. So if you have an older amperage system, you might need an upgrade. And either way, that's worth considering, especially for electrical code. It's as much about safety than anything else. But your installer will be able to take a look at that and let you know if new upgrades are required. And so to recap, you have your solar array that's producing electricity that goes to the solar inverter, goes to the electric panel, and then from there, the electricity goes wherever the demand is. So if you're using electricity in your home, like lights, appliances, that's where those electrons are going to go to. And then otherwise, it's going to overflow through your utility meter, go into power lines, and help power your neighbors' homes. And so in other words, you have that inverter that converts that electricity from DC to AC, use that electricity, and then that's where at the meter that net metering happens, and it can bidirectionally count, what you're taking from the grid and what you're putting on from your home. And so as Jeff talked about a little bit earlier, essentially when your bill comes up, you'll be able to see that difference of what you bought from the grid, what you export to the grid, and then what you pay for your bill. And that minimum charge, which I think was about $38, that's something that will always be there in terms of supporting the grid, which is essentially acting like a battery for your household. So one thing to note too, and Jeff, actually, maybe you can answer this. Do you guys use production meters?
We do not use production meters.
Okay, and this is sometimes confuses people, but electric bills don't necessarily track your production of your solar system. And so some people get a little confused when they look at their inverter and then they look at their bill, it doesn't match up. The difference is electricity you use in your home. So just keep that in mind. What you see on your bill is what you use after your consumption. So as part of our role to help save money and ease this process of the solar co-op, we do roof review. And the things that we look for to make sure that a home is well suited for solar, first is roof orientation. The best roof is facing south, so you can get that full exposure to the sun year round. The next best tends to be the west in terms of getting that full sun exposure, or even due east to west, also pretty good. But anything that's facing north, you guys know this with the snow, it just kind of lingers there, not going to get a lot of sunlight in the summer, winter. And so we don't necessarily recommend that. Certainly, if there's any shading, so any nearby buildings or trees, those tend to be a challenge. And then we also make sure that there's enough space to mount the panels on your roof, especially. So we look for at least a minimum of 200 square feet to start building off the system. And then also, as you heard, community solar is an option as well. And so basically, it's the opportunity where multiple stakeholders within the community can go solar without having to have the panels on their roof. And so you can provide that subscription and be able to get a monthly credit. And it can be a system that's within the community. And so I know Jeff talked a little bit about that earlier. So certainly you can look that up online. And then outside of the local market, we also have our own website where you can look at other community solar projects across the state. But again, your best resource, depending on the local utility, is to go on their website, whether it's Yampa Valley or White River or others in the region. Let us know. We can also help find information for you. And so certainly, as we have been seeing more and more, as the power goes out, your system will go down. That is a safety mechanism to make sure that there is no electrons on those lines as the linemen come out to do repairs. And so you are going to need batteries if you want to maintain power during an outage. And I found that out this weekend. As many of you know, in Denver, we had this lovely snowstorm that knocked out power all over. And so with batteries, you really, it's an additional safeguard and backup. So as I mentioned earlier, the grid is ultimately your battery. That's what you're paying for that connection. But if you get frequent utility outages, you have critical loads at home, whether it's a well pump, medical equipment, servers, or even emergency or disaster preparedness, you might want to consider a heat pump, or sorry, battery storage. I say heat pump because just a couple of weeks ago, I installed a heat pump in my house. And I was thinking when we lost power, oh golly, if we didn't have the furnace backup to ramp up to keep the house warm, we would be in trouble. And that's actually another reason to think about. If you electrify your home, a battery provides that extra safeguard. If you do lose power, you're able to keep it heated, and we don't end up in a situation like we saw in Texas last year, unfortunately. So if you want to learn a little bit more about batteries, we do have some online resources, solarunitedneighbors.org/storage. And just to kind of walk through a hypothetical example, here we have the Johnson's family. They do lose power several times a year, and each time they do lose power, it's about for a day or so. And so they decided to back up their house. They really want to prioritize keeping the refrigerator and microwave online, some lights and outlets in their house online, their cable modem so they still have internet, and then a small window air conditioner. They decided not to power their stove, dryer, or electric water heater because they know they could be okay for a day without needing to use those appliances. And so based on those demands, their installer ended up designing a 13.5 kilowatt hour battery bank. And it's designed to fully recharge with the solar system up to, in this case, that's a 6 kilowatt size solar system. But it's worth noting that if you have a snow event or multiple days of bad weather with no sunlight, your system will run out of power after one day in this example. So again, it really is a personalized decision of how you want to design your battery storage. And also note there are additional costs to that. So a battery system like this is easily $10,000 to $15,000 in the current market. And unfortunately, because of the incidents we have been seeing, the demand for batteries continue to go up. So definitely it's something that will be offered as part of this co-op. You'll be able to see what offerings are from local installers. But just note that certainly demand is going up. Also, as many of you heard earlier, a easy, great mix is having solar and an electric vehicle. You're able to power your vehicle from your home, so it's really great. And EV chargers will be offered as part of the co-op. Electrician's going to be on site anyway, so why not install the outlets you need or even charger in your garage to make sure that you're ready for your electric vehicle. So there are generally level 2 chargers are what we see at homes. It's a 240 volt outlet. And the charging speed can be up to 6 times as fast as a standard outlet. So it's really important to, if you want to use it regularly, to get that, where you get up to 10 to 30 miles of charge per hour, depending on the type of vehicle that you have. Often people install it either interior or exterior. There are different models that are weatherized. You can have an electric service. Generally, you're looking for at least 30 to 50 amps. So going back to that electrical panel upgrade, that's something to consider. There are some products like Solar Edge that not only has a solar inverter for your system, but actually combines both with a charger or can even combine with a battery storage. So these systems are beginning to be more integrated and smart. So depending on the bids we get from installers, we'll be able to see what options are available to the community. And there is network capacity. We're seeing more and more in various markets, basically smart grids. So Yampa Valley, for instance, could signal and be able to leverage at some point, not only your battery, but even your electric vehicle to help provide grid service. So we're seeing that happen more and more in terms of where the grid's going in the future. And so in terms of costs, you can see the charging unit itself is anywhere from $500 to $700. Installation can be up to a couple $1,000s. And so this really can be dependent. But as you heard, both YVEA and WREA offer a $250 rebate. As far as other local utilities, I know there are other rebates. So let us know if we're missing anything. We'll be glad to make sure that information is available. And lastly, with EVs, so again, the advantages, you can run your car with your own solar energy. You also have fewer brake jobs because this offers regenerative braking. There's no oil changes, and oftentimes there's savings upwards of $1,000 or more because of that lower cost of electricity versus gas. So you can really do more with that combination of helping use your solar system and save money with your gas. And it can even help in terms of the economics, pay off your solar system quicker. So I'm going to run through just a couple frequently asked questions, and I'll pause to take questions from you all. First, warranties. There are 3 main warranties to consider. One is the power production warranty. And so what that means is a solar system does lose a little bit of efficiency every year, but the standard warranty is that over 25 years, your solar system would be no less than 80% of its current nameplate capacity. So say you have a 10 kilowatt solar system, after 25 years, you should still expect that to be up to 8 kilowatts of production. There are some products that are up to 90% or higher as well. So we are seeing that efficiency and that warranty really play out. Additionally, there is the manufacturer's warranty. Generally, you'll know pretty quickly if there's any issues or any defects within your solar system pretty quickly, but that's something to consider. Also, a lot of times inverters have a life of, for a string inverter, between 10 to 15 years. So sometimes you can get extended warranties on those. And then lastly, there is the workmanship warranty. And so that's the actual guys that go out and ladies onto your roof to do the installation and do those penetrations. So if there's any issues with that, oftentimes that's between 10 to 25 years to protect your roof. For homeowners insurance, oftentimes there wouldn't be any changes. Some insurance providers do provide savings. In my own case, I had a detached garage I put solar on, and because of it was a separated facility from my main house, I paid like $1 more per month for my insurance coverage in that case. So it's always worth to call your insurance agent to see what they think about going solar, and if they want to charge you a lot of money, then it might be worth shopping around. But we really haven't seen that. Maintenance, I mentioned about the inverter. Otherwise, solar panels are generally very low maintenance. Occasionally, like there might be a critter that can get into the wiring or anything like that. But otherwise, with the natural weather cycles, they tend to wash themselves off. I have seen where we do have continued fires and dust. Sometimes there can be accumulation of buildup of dust on the panels. You can just get your hose and hose that down. I did that in my own house in Denver and found a 5% increase in efficiency. So again, you don't necessarily need to do that, but it's something to keep in mind. And then I actually have met people from the local community in Craig that have had solar systems from I think it was the 1980s, and those systems are still going strong. So while these warranties tend to favor 25 years, those solar systems could actually last much longer than that. So these systems are pretty resilient. They're designed to withstand things like hail and other ongoing, weather impacts. So they definitely have a long life. And then in Colorado, Homeowners Association cannot prevent you from installing solar on your home, but they will have a say of where it may be installed. So if you are part of an HOA, that's something to consider. Out of the 300 plus folks that we've worked with, we've really had no issues working with HOAs. So if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to us. There's some more hoops to jump through when you're considering a historic district, but same thing, reach out to them, communicate, and it shouldn't be an issue. And then lastly, I mentioned the snow loads. They tend to shed pretty well once the sun comes out. Be mindful, just like with a metal roof, that shedding is going to go someplace. So if you park your car underneath your solar system, beware. As well as hail. One of our most expensive disasters in Colorado history was the 2018 hailstorm right by NREL. And basically, I mean, it was 17 when it happened. But out of right there at the National Renewable Energy Lab, they had 3,000 solar panels out and exposed to very large hail impacts. And out of those 3,000 panels, only one actually shattered and needed to be replaced. Now, I have run into a few places where there's been multiple significant hail events. And so certainly over multiple impacts, if your production of your solar system does get hurt, it can be an insurance claim. So that's something that should be covered. And whether or not your solar system needs to be replaced, if you have to replace your roof, insurance will cover the cost of removing those panels and putting them back on. So with that, I'll pause and just on the more technical aspects of solar, does anyone have any questions?
Typically, how many panels does a house need?
Yeah, good question. It depends on the make of the panel. So we see anywhere from 300 to 400 watt panels. So the higher the wattage of the panel, the less panels you'll need on your house. And then that also depends on what your electrical demand is for your home. And so as you heard from Jeff, with net metering, they look at the annual production from the previous year to look at the 100 up to 120% of what is allowed for sizing your solar system. So based on the electrical demand is where you start. And then looking at the roof size and everything else, you'll be able to get a good sense of how many panels that means for you in terms of sizing the system appropriately. And I should add also, it doesn't mean that you have to go to 100% either. A lot of folks with solar installers, they they want to pitch the 100%, but the economics may not work out. So even going for a smaller size system can still provide cost savings for the customer. So there is flexibility in that. Any other questions? Cool. Well, we'll keep on moving here. So I'll talk a little bit about the economics, just so you know where we are right now. Solar really has become a great investment. As you can see, the price from the 1970s to today really has dropped significantly. And even in just the last, I guess, 12 years now, we've seen prices drop 90% since 2010. So it really shows that solar is no longer a specialty or boutique item. It's becoming something with an excellent and well-known return on investment. And right now, especially, there is federal incentives. So the federal tax credit provides a 26% credit for folks that install solar for any projects that are grid ready by the end of this year. And then after this year, it will step down to 22% and then phase out. And so as you heard from many of the speakers already, solar co-ops can help reduce costs for everyone that's going with the co-op. As you can see here, well, especially in the last 10 years, what we've seen are the system component costs have been coming down and levelizing out, but the soft costs are still pretty high. And for a lot of installers, it can cost thousands of dollars for them to reach out into the community, find a potential lead, have those kitchen side table conversations to talk about it, and then ultimately sign a contract. So our goal as an organization is to help save those costs. And for full transparency, we do ask for a development fee from the installer of $600 for any signed contract, but that comes from the savings that they realize and the savings that the customer will realize through this program. And then that supports our mission and what we do. And as I mentioned, where we are today is 26%. It's going to go down to 22% by 2023. And then for residential, it will actually phase out completely to in 2024. Unless you are a business, it will phase out to or go down to 10%. So if you are a small business that's looking at this, there are various incentives that you can look at. And I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. So to talk about what the economics look like, I'll emphasize this is what we see as the average pricing. That's actually, it's not say solar co-op pricing, but this is the average price in the area. So we need to update that graphic. But basically, we anticipate solar right now is about $320 a watt, give or take, in the local market. Prices are starting to sneak up a little bit. And so you would see the savings of the co-op probably be below this. But honestly, it's been a couple of years since we've been in the area, so we're excited to see what bids we get from local installers. But this is just a start of being ballpark pricing of what you're looking at. Based on an average size system, I think looking at the numbers, an 8 kilowatt system should cover most people at 100%. So 4 kilowatt might be 50% unless you're a very efficient home, just to give you a general sense of what these numbers might look like. So you can see out-of-pocket costs could be anywhere from $13,000 all the way up to maybe $25,000, $26,000. Then you have that 26% federal tax credit. And I should emphasize that you get that if you're a taxed entity. So if you're retired or if you are a nonprofit, you actually won't be able to get that. We as an organization are advocating for it to become a rebate, an instant rebate, but we're not there yet, unfortunately. And so you can see what that net initial cost is, and then what the projected savings are. And then these numbers, the reason why we have Yampa Valley's logo up there is we use that from the small general rate. So this is what you can expect in terms of savings over time. And then this is White River Electric, representing obviously Rio Blanco County. And so the numbers are slightly changed there in terms of the payback. I believe they have a higher connection fee with the grid, and that's what's impacting some of those prices. I also know that they're looking at potentially changing some of their rate structure in the next couple of months. We don't have the details of that yet, but we wanted to make sure at least we got this information out right now. And then obviously for a lot of folks, financing is an option to help cover the cost of the system. And so both from the installer standpoint, as well as the state, there's a variety of options available. But here's some of the rates that you can see in terms of from the 4 to 8 kilowatt system, or if it's a 10-year or 15-year loan, and what the payment would look like, what the savings could look like, and what that net payment is up until you pay back the system. Most solar systems we find in the market that you all are in is probably anywhere from a 10 to 12 plus year payback. So just keep that in mind. But if you're electrifying your home, if you're electrifying your vehicle, those payoffs could be a little bit quicker. So in terms of financing options, we do have a variety of options we like to highlight. We are finance neutral, but we want to make sure folks are aware. And so you can go solarunitedneighbors.org/financing. There's also third-party ownership. So are power purchase agreements or leases where essentially the installer or third party would own your system. We always encourage people to read the fine print. Sometimes there's stipulations that you would have to buy back the system if you ever sell your home. Also, calculating the full cost of what that is. For cash flow, it might be great, but longer term, you might be paying more out of pocket for the privilege of having someone else own the solar system on your roof. And lastly, especially in the region, there are Rural Energy for America program grants. I believe those have been bumped up with the current administration from 50,000 up to 75,000. And so the Colorado Energy Office actually will work with you to provide assistance. And we have one of our largest members is an aquaponics farmer, and they were able to get $50,000 grant out of the REAP system. So it's definitely worth checking out if you are a producer. And so with loans, you know, you can go through your installer or on your own. You can look at a home equity line of credit, refinancing, and including the solar system. A lot of banks do offer green products. So looking at those options definitely can go a long way. We also are members of the Clean Energy Credit Union and Community First Credit Union. So by being a member of the co-op, you automatically qualify to work with them. We've had a lot of success with the Colorado Renew Loan Program. That's specifically with Elevations Credit Union. And I know they are shifting that program from the state to the Colorado Clean Energy Fund. So we'll provide more information once that's all finalized next couple of weeks. And then lastly, we do have a pilot program that's offered from the Colorado Clean Energy Fund specifically to co-op members. So if your household makes 80% of area median income or lower, you actually can qualify for a $12,000 up to 12-year loan at 3% through their offering. So that's something that we've been expanding on as we prioritize equity and access to the benefits of solar. So I'll pause there and see, does anyone have any questions just on the financing or loans aspect of things?
You kind of threw me, if you're retired, you're not entitled to a rebate.
So unfortunately, if you don't pay taxes in retirement, the tax credit is done through your taxes. So if you don't file taxes, you can't get the credit.
Okay, well, that makes sense. If you still have income coming in and you've been taxed on it, you should be able to receive credit.
Correct, yes. And it varies case by case, obviously, but it's something I want to make sure folks are aware of because we've seen some people obviously hit a wall, and we want to be clear about what the reality is with the tax credit.
And Bryce, that tax credit's a carry forward still, isn't it?
Yes.
So take it in 1 year.
Yeah, you can spread it over 5 years. And thank you for mentioning that, Paul, because the other note is if you are a business, you can also do accelerated depreciation for up to 5 years. So I've seen businesses use both of those to really cut off their or cut their payback down by several years because it can do that accelerated depreciation.
So I have a question, but I'm not sure if it's a smart question.
There are no dumb questions. Go ahead.
Right. So let's say my last bill was $63 for electric. This doesn't seem like this is financially smart for me. Seems like this would actually cost me more money. Because with the $38 I have to pay to stay on the grid, right? That was what the number was. I'm only saving $25 a month, basically what I pay for Netflix. So I'm not sure if it's worth it. Is it? Am I missing something?
It is circumstantial. Like in your case, it may not be worth it. It may be worth looking at a smaller size system. The great thing about the solar co-op is that it's free to join and there's no obligation to go solar. So if you join, you'll be able to get a proposal and see what that pricing is and what that payoff looks like. And in your case, it may not make sense, and that's totally fine. Like our goal here is just to make sure you're informed of what your options are and be able to move forward appropriately.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Yeah.
It's free to become a member.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, then I'll take us home with how solar co-ops work. And so I wanted to include this photo. This is, for those that know, in Hayden, we have the granary and the Wild Goose Coffee. So Tammy hosted us for our last selection committee. So this is everyone deciding on the installer back in 2019. It was a lot of fun. We do these online now, but being able to do in person is always a fun experience. So we'll see what we can do this time. But really, why join the solar co-op? You get that best value on the installation. There's economies of scale with those savings. You have support throughout the process, and process being not only the installation process, but I'm still supporting folks that signed up from 2019 if they have questions or concerns or worries. And so, we're here to be a partner with you and make sure, whatever happens with the installer, we're here to be a resource for you. You also can connect with fellow solar enthusiasts as we get more into normal capacity post-COVID, well, in the next phase of COVID, I guess. We want to do more engagement events in the community. So if we can do a tour, say, of community solar gardens or other ways of meeting different community leaders or other projects, we want to do more of that to really engage the community. So that's something we want to facilitate, as well as become part of the growing solar movement. As I mentioned, things like the tax credit are not a rebate, and we need to demonstrate support across the country to say that this is something that we believe everyone should have access to, and we shouldn't limit it. So things like that, it takes a little bit of a little oil into the political process, and we're happy to support that. And so where we are today, today is the official launch of the co-op. So we've already had, I think it was 18 or 20 people sign up, and we're excited to have a goal of 100 people over the next couple of months to sign up and engage. Our goal is to start projects hopefully through into the summer and fall and before the snows come back, but we know that can be variable. But that's the sooner you sign up, the sooner you'll be in the queue to be able to get installed on a shorter timeline. So the first couple of months here, we're going to continue to do more information sessions. I'll be back in town, both in Steamboat, as well as Hayden, Craig, and Meeker in the near future. So if you know any friends and neighbors that are out that way, let them know. We'll do probably some meet and greets, some coffee, or some solar trivia, if not information sessions just like this. So you can sign up to our website. And then once we have about 30 folks, so we're already getting close to this, we'll begin the RFP process. So we'll send out to local installers, which I know probably 3 or 4 already I've heard are interested. So we'll invite them to provide proposals. We'll provide an apples to apples comparison of all their bids. And then our selection committee made up of members will be able to sit down, review that process, review all the bids, and then to select one installer to serve the group at large. Our co-op sign up will be up until September 2nd, but obviously as we get closer to that September timeline, you're probably looking at a 2023 install. So again, something to be aware of. The sooner you get in, the more likely you'll get installed this year. You get that proposal once you do sign up from the installer, and then it's up to you if you want to sign your contract or if you want to walk away. Like I said, there is no obligation to go solar. But if you do install, the installer will work with you. And then once we get everyone ready to go and powered on, we'll have a celebration and party and really celebrate our impact. So with that said, so right now our website is live. You can sign up now. It's solarunitedneighbors.org/northwest. We'll put this presentation that we're recording online so that way others can watch this or attend our future events. And really it comes down now to the community and helping spread the word and invite more people to partake. And as I mentioned, just to wrap up, part of our work is to support advocacy. And we understand that there's lots of challenges, whether it's the economic downturn, social injustice, or climate change. We are seeing a large shift in the community and what's important. And so we are part of a coalition of organizations seeking out to support 30 million solar homes across the country to help address these challenges. And looking at ways that we can have conversations within communities like Yampa Valley, knowing that, again, this is going to be a difficult process ahead. And so we do have an online petition to help build this movement and connect with members of Congress to do things like I said with the rebate and other policies that really help streamline this process. So keep that in mind. You don't have to participate. You can just sign up for the co-op, go solar, and that's it. But again, we do a lot more than just that. So with that, again, my name is Bryce. Our team email is as in Colorado, team at solarunitedneighbors.org. And so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us and we'll get back to you as soon as we can to answer your questions. So with that, I'll wrap up and see if there's any other questions in the audience.
Bryce, you said earlier solar isn't the answer. And I need you to explain that and elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah, I appreciate the question because I think, there's a lot of people, I just moved to a new neighborhood and I've had a lot of installers come through, and it's easy to hear great talking points about solar being the be all get all that is answering all the problems. But especially I think in communities like Yampa Valley and elsewhere, it's going to take a village to really figure out, what does a transition away from a fossil fuel economy look like? What does a transition toward a renewable energy system look like? And there's existing infrastructure, there's existing networks and families, and a lot of very complicated overlapping connections that need to be worked with. And so solar, I like to say it's a puzzle piece where certainly it can make an impact. There are benefits to it. There are savings that families will realize over time, but it's not the solution. And so our goal is to not only help support people going solar and receiving those benefits, but how can we be a partner in the community, knowing that this whole ecosystem, other challenges are happening. So that way it's, we're not just a extension of the solar industry, but we're really here to be a partner within the community to facilitate whether it is conversations or, whatever role we have to be a partner in the community. And in the past, we've had, we held a town hall looking at the YVEA elections. We've had radio podcast recording with some local leaders talking about what this means with solar, but also the transition. And so we're always looking at opportunities to help promote continued dialogue. So yeah, does that answer your question? No?
Part of the process.
Yeah, and I think in other words, like solar, to the question specifically, I think, it's nothing to shy away from. As we look at the transition from coal, solar is not going to be a one-to-one answer. I think there's some really cool stuff being talked about, like I think the molten salt storage facility and other ideas, but wind energy storage, smart grid, all these things are part of the equation. And so, solar is part of the answer, but it's not the answer, is what I meant.
That's good.
Hey, Bryce, how concerned are you about the trade dispute that's being reviewed by the Commerce Department?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and we are monitoring that closely. Certainly, I am in touch with our partners with the Colorado Solar and Storage Association. I think we will know more within the next month or two how significant of an impact that will have. And I know we talked about this before. I've talked to several installers to gauge, how serious is this? And I think first, the installers I know of, a lot of them have secured procurement. They have supplies and they have supply chains that they're confident about, and they don't see any immediate impact. But what could happen is in some of these streams of panels coming from overseas with these tariffs, if that supply does get shut down, there will be a ripple effect in the industry. And unfortunately, we will likely see prices go up. So the sooner we can move forward with the RFP process and lock in pricing and kind of expectations of installations, the sooner we can not worry about that being a liability. So I think our timing's probably good for this co-op, but again, there's a lot of unknowns right now between Congress, trade, and other factors.
Bryce, will the RFP for the co-op ask for information from potential vendors about their supply sources and any potential disruptions?
Yes, we do include that question. We ask about their relationship with their suppliers to understand, how long have you been working with them, how many years. Out of the 13 co-ops I've done, only once have we had a truck coming to Colorado, moved to like Utah, and suddenly folks are left dry. But that was a one-off situation, and I think the bids really highlight. You can see as we review the bids which installers have the solid relationships and which ones don't.
A question about your experience with solar co-ops in smaller areas like ours, where we don't have a lot of installers to support us. I have 2 solar systems now for a total of 9.9 kilowatt hours. And that started in 2009, the first one. So my first installer went out of business and left the area. My first solar products on my roof, the company went out of business in 2010. It was the #1 in the United States producer at the time. And then I have a solar thermal system with Schuco tanks, which were #1 at the time I bought them. And Schuco moved out of the residential market. Whereas I'm a strong solar proponent and I want to add substantially to what we have for EVs and battery storage, it's easy to get really excited up front, and then in a small area like us, your support system disappears on you. Warranties don't mean anything when the company no longer exists. And I'm hoping that perhaps you have seen some examples with other solar co-ops maybe working together, but it still doesn't help if the company goes out of business. So just any comments you might have.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question, and I appreciate you bringing it up because we've seen that not too often, but it does happen, and we remain committed to the community. I think most recently there was an installer that went out of business in Florida, and we ended up working with members to partner with another selected installer that would provide a service contract. So if any issues came up, they were able to service the local area. Now, I can say in specifically the Northwest region, I know of probably 4 to 5, maybe 6 installers that I've talked directly with over the last year or two. And so certainly we're looking at that network to, whoever wins the co-op, if something goes wrong with that installer in the longer term, we would lean on those installers to make sure that, if we need a backup servicer, we can work with the community and decide who would best serve that role. It can be tricky. We've worked in now in a couple of different areas from Mesa County down to San Miguel County, and this will be our second co-op for the Yampa Valley region. So, I think, it's never fun when that happens, but we're committed to supporting the community and making sure folks are taken care of if there are issues that come up.
Yeah, there's a tendency to say, well, I can't help you support your system because I didn't install it. And so I think that's a good thing the co-op could do, is to help when people for very good reasons can no longer continue their business.
Right. Well, and I think that's one of the benefits of doing the co-op is we've got Sun as a national nonprofit with some clout that has the ability to help solve these issues as opposed to each individual trying to go it alone.
Question.
Go ahead.
What role, if any, does the co-op play in permitting and individual project coordination with YBEA?
Yeah, so overall, it's pretty limited. Once the contract is signed between the individual and the installer, they move forward with that process. But we do have a steering committee where we keep in touch with the local utilities and our municipal partners to make sure is everything working out. And if we find out that anybody's overwhelmed, we try to help communicate that across the group. So that way everyone's on the same expectations of capacity and time. So, we've been meeting in the steering committee now for a little while. So I imagine Winnie and Jeff and others can attest, I think we're in a place that we're ready to go.
Just a follow-up question to the previous question. Is there any regulation behind if we weren't, say, satisfied with the companies that were in the local area? Could we use a company along the Front Range that might, say, have a longer term possibility? So that is a possibility.
Yeah, so for the RFP process, we open it up to anybody in the region. So all installers in our Colorado list will receive that, and it's up to them to bid in. Generally, we do see local installers. Sometimes we see a few out-of-state installers, and then oftentimes the bids speak for themselves. And I think one of the key questions that we'll keep a close eye on is, the experience specifically in areas with snow loads and considering shedding and other factors that are unique to Steamboat and Routt County and elsewhere in the region. So you can find out pretty quickly if installers have that type of experience or not, and what that means to selecting them for the co-op. But yeah, there's nothing preventing Front Range installers from bidding in, but ultimately the selection will come down to the selection committee.
Who's on the selection committee?
Any member that signs up is welcome to join the selection committee.
So you haven't,
So you go, you're the chair.
haven't formulated the selection.
You haven't put this, the question was, you haven't put the committee together yet?
No, we shortly after the next couple of days, we'll begin to look at a date and send some messages out to invite people to join. So we wait until at least 30 signups. So we'll see in the next couple of days if we're able to get there. And then we'll begin to pull together RFP, get feedback from our municipal partners, make sure we get all the questions we want in it, and then begin that process. And at the same time, we'll highlight that for our members to join if they would like to.
Well, as of right now, we have 21 members.
It keeps going up. So yes, we're going to get there hopefully pretty soon.
I did make more copies of the handouts for anyone who wasn't able to get them this week came in. Hopefully I made enough. If not, talk to me and I'll make more.
And also, I think you have the flyers there too. Please grab a flyer, take it to your local coffee shop or, wherever you go for hanging out. It's good to start those conversations and to help spread the word, because we really want everyone to know in the community. And, I'm not going to be everywhere. I can't be everywhere, and Winnie or anybody else. So really word of mouth is going to be key.
Does anyone else have any questions?
So what's the next step? You wait to get 30?
So the next step is that if you're interested in becoming a member of the co-op, you go online, solarunitedneighbors.org/northwest, and you sign up. And then when there's 30, then they start the RFP process. They select, whoever wants to be on the selection committee, reviews the proposals that are submitted and jointly decide on which vendor to utilize. And then that vendor begins giving us all price quotes.
And it's a single vendor, correct?
It's a single vendor.
That's correct.
So will the respondents be identifying actual costs?
The vendors?
Yeah.
Yeah, for you, yes.
Oh, no, not for me individually, because the selection committee is going to need to select a vendor. What will that selection be based upon?
Think of it more as qualifications and not individual cost per property, but cost per kilowatt type process. Am I right on that one, Bryce?
That's right.
It's like, how far away are you from city square, roof mount, ground mount, 2 stories, 1 story, that kind of stuff. So the vendors don't know everything until they go on site, but they'll give you enough breakpoints that you can try to compare across.
Yep.
Okay.
Then the next step is then the vendor comes to your individual
Right.
sites. Okay, based on the rules we all agree to, you're
Right. So you're looking at all the proposals and choosing the vendor based on their experience and overall general pricing. And then the price for any individual member is based on the specifics of their particular property and array.
Yeah, and I'll show you, this is the actual response template that we have. And so you can see, we ask for $1 per watt pricing. We ask, basic module, often then with a more premium module. So maybe a 350 watt panel versus a 400 watt panel. We ask for any adders they might have. So anything from whether or not there's a flat roof, if there's a needed cost for an upgrade, trenching cost, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes we see a dozen or more different adders depending on the pricing. And then we come up with some basically an apples to apples comparison of, if you have a 4 kilowatt system, this is how much it's going to cost with vendor A versus vendor B versus vendor C. And so we go through all these questions of, do you provide batteries, EVs, power purchasing agreements. SRECs don't really apply here. We won't go into that. But then, yeah, payment milestones, total equipment. We also ask, do you have a backlog of work? I think somewhere in here is the procurement as well. So again, it's pretty detailed, and we will offer additional questions just to make sure that we're covering all the bases for this current co-op.
I have a question about the timing of signing a contract. So is this the case, after the vendor selected and appointments are made to come out to individual properties to do the review, then is a contract offered immediately, or does it wait until the installer is ready to do your job?
Yeah, so they will provide a proposal soon after the site visit, depending on how they cycle for everybody. And in that proposal, they'll come up with what the timeline is. Some installers might be ready to start with installs right off the bat. Some might have a backlog of a month or two, depending on the bids we get. And so the proposal would reflect that. And then you're able to sign that contract to essentially lock yourself in the queue of that timeline. So the longer you wait to sign your proposal, the further back that installation timeline might be, just because there is potentially 100 people going to be in line for this. We anticipate probably 25 to 30 projects that would come out of this current initiative. So we'll see how that ends up. Timeline wise, for firm deadlines, the sign up deadline is September 2nd. And then our contract with the installer tends to be 1 month after that is the contract signing deadline. So that's the last opportunity anybody will have to lock in their contract. So that's what we will have in the bid, and we'll see what comes out from the installers.
Did you say 1 week or 1 month after the September is the deadline?
1 month. So it'll be give or take around October 2nd is the contract signing deadline. But again, keep in mind, it's going to be first come, first serve as they run through it.
So then you're looking at October through December and into 2023 for installation.
Yes, if you sign up later in the co-op. If you sign up now and the installer select the next couple of weeks, you might be able to start projects going as early as probably late June or early July. But there's a lot of circumstances there to kind of figure out with the process ahead. So it will come down to the installer, and we'll obviously communicate with everybody what the expectations are once we do move forward.
So will the individual installer provide you a statement of paid in full or amount paid, something that is viable to support an income tax claim?
Yep, exactly. Oftentimes either the proposal or the signed contract will show the overall cost of the system, and that's what you would file to the IRS as you file taxes to deduct from. Also, I should note that any cost to your solar system can be included. So if there's like a tree that you need to take down, not that I advocate for taking down trees, but that could potentially be included in the cost, or other additional costs of say trenching for a ground mount system, things like that. But my official answer is always talk to your accountant and to work that out. But you can Google it pretty quickly, and there's a pretty simple form to be able to fill out.
Question.
So,
Go ahead.
So the 26 percent, is it true that covers all parts and labor?
Yep. So if you
have to hire another electrician to come in and replace your circuit breaker panel, et cetera.
Yep. And actually, ideally, the installer will be able to facilitate that. But yeah, all costs, all in, track your paperwork. And then when you file, you just type in the number, and then you keep the paperwork on hand if you ever get audited. But it's pretty much plug and play. So say you pay all in $10,000, the following year when you file taxes, you get that $2,600 back.
And I understand that in the past, it took a long time for YBEA to make it out to finalize the connection of the net metering. But as long as you have that receipt from your installer, and it was within the time frame to get the 26% instead of later in the 22%, then you're good to go on that tax credit.
Yeah, the IRS looks for the system to be, quote, grid ready by December 31st. So if you're not officially interconnected with Yampa Valley at that point, you'll still be considered grid ready and can get that credit. And then Jeff or Megan, like what is the current turnaround that you guys are seeing for permitting?
For us, so the standard process is I'll receive the application from the installer. I process that application usually within that week. And I check to make sure that all the qualifications that they meet that 120%, and I have all the documentation that I need from the installer. And then I give the installer basically notice that they can construct that facility. And then once they're done, I receive notice from them along with the county inspector. And then once I receive that, plus just your insurance showing that you have $300,000 in liability insurance, then we'll come out and inspect that the system operates correctly with our system. So it really just depends on how quickly the installer completes everything. But we're usually out there within a week and a half to 2 weeks after we receive notice that the system's ready to be energized.
Yeah, and like I said, we track all of that, and if we find or if the timeline changes, we let everyone know. But generally between ourselves, the installer, YVEA, there's lots of communication to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Does it seem like placement of solar panels on a home with asphaltic shingles may very well extend the life of those shingles? But do they come to the house and make in their evaluation determine, we think you should reshingle before we place the panels?
Yeah, we recommend if your roof is older than 5 to 10 years for an asphalt shingle roof to consider replacing your roof and get it reviewed, because unless it's an insurable event, you'll probably have to spend several $1,000s to take off the panels and to reinstall them. That said, once they are up there, the asphalt shingles underneath the panels are generally protected from the elements because the panel takes the beating from hail or anything else. But if there is an event that your roof needs to be replaced with, your insurance would just cover replacing all of the roof. So that's the way I've seen it work. Paul, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Seen a lot of roofing contractors become solar installers. But no, that's a good point. Don't put new solar on a roof that's not gonna last 5 or 10 years, right, or 15, so.
Metal roofs a little bit better though, right?
Well, the metal roof is,
It'll last.
theoretically, you're not supposed to replace it, it's the asphalt shingles and the county span shakes, right? You can't do those.
Yeah.
So, which is a good idea.
Sure.
So now the roof, the quality of your roof is very important in your upfront decision.
But
I think a significant part of your total bill, you need to factor that in for.
Yeah, unfortunately, the
Co-op
IRS,
and then-
to my knowledge, hasn't allowed a new roof as part of your solar installation. which is a bad thing. But that's what the solar contractor is supposed to do, I would say, you really.
So they'll give you an opinion.
Yeah, they'll take a look and let you know. I know there's a few cases where folks roofs are older and actually can't structurally support solar. There's only been a few cases in the community that I've come across, but if you have an older home, it's something to keep in mind, and the installer will be able to take a look at it. Worst case, if it's iffy, you may need to get another assessor out, but yeah, that's something that's not too often.
Is roof installation always better than a ground installation?
Not necessarily. It really depends what's available to you. Because it's the roof access, it's the space, it's the orientation. If you have it on your roof, it's a little easier to connect it to your meter and everything else. But if you have a ground mount system, it's going to be a lot more expensive. But they tend to be more efficient because there's more cooling that can happen because they're not up against the roof. But there's other risks, if you have livestock or anything, obviously you want to be considerate of that, having a ground mount system. So pros and cons, but all in all, I would say the efficiency differences are minimal between the different styles. It really comes down to what's easiest and what's a preference.
In the city or county, does anybody know have any code issues of
They'll be
ground
the same.
placement?
They'll be the same, right?
Yeah, we streamlined the process for it, so it's in use by right in pretty much every zone district.
And I know, Winnie, there's
Our setback requirements as well for structures so that you can put a solar mount pretty much up to the property line.
There could be HOA issues. in
There could be
individual
HOA
neighborhoods.
issues, but the city and the county don't address those.
And the installer's gonna have to go through the permitting process with the building department.
Okay, do we have any final questions?
Talk about installers, what about the product itself? I'm sure there's multiple vendors who produce these things. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we do see probably anywhere from 4 to 5 different manufacturers. I would say overall, when it comes to the panels themselves, it's a fairly matured product. Whether they're made here or overseas, it doesn't really matter. The science of actually manufacturing panels is pretty advanced. We do look at the product that are being offered, and there are like the California Electric Commission actually has testing grounds where they put panels out and see how they rate compared to their nameplates. And so we look at that to see, these panels field tested, are they meeting expectations? We check reviews both for installers as well as the panels. So we do that background analysis as part of the RFP process, present that information to the committee. So all in all, I would say there's only been 1 or 2 panels that were kind of iffy in some proposals I've seen over the last couple of years, but nothing otherwise that's been really concerning.
The quality of the panels in general is pretty much good. There's only a couple vendors out there that if a vendor came in and said, or a proposal came in with those panels, we might contemplate another installer. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and we asked them to at least give us a couple options of panels. So, if they do provide maybe a lower quality one, the premium one might be, a different model or maybe American made model. So again, we'll know more once we get the bids in, but we look at all of that.
Okay. Just going back, one more question. So you said it's not like, if I was to pay straight out, it's not that I paid it straight out, it's that it has to be, if I'm gonna get the 24% discount, it's that it has to be certified by the end of the year. So it's not that I paid it, it's that I've had,
Well, you can finance it and that's payment.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, so if you sign a financing contract, you're still doing it.
Oh.
Here you sign the
Okay.
contract. Because the vendor's still getting paid.
Okay,
in that.
right. So then I still get that discount. Okay, so.
It's not a discount, it's a federal tax.
Federal tax, right. You're right. Sorry. Thank you for correcting.
Your tax dollars at work.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you to everybody for coming. And if there are other questions, I'm sure we've got Paul and Bryce and Jeff and Vic who are happy to answer.
Yep.
Pam Boyd.
Yes.
And yeah, I look forward to coming out there in person and seeing many of you in person, maybe over a beer. So.
Bye-bye.
All right, thanks, everybody.